Welcome to the Womanly Podcast,
where we embrace womanhood in its entirety. I'm Delana.
And I'm Madeline, and we're so excited that you've joined us today because there's room for you at our table. Wow, our first episode, just the two of us. So we're
just
cheers.
Look, we're drinking the same drink too.
We can make it. We try. I don't know if that's the words, but that's how I feel right now. And we even have the same drink. We both have the cherry bubbly.
I know.
Don't even need to ask because it's that simple.
It's that simple. We're both drinking. See, these episodes about to be lightning speed now, like this.
Oh, don't say that. We're gonna be slow. We're gonna come in here.
Did I jinx it?
Well, this is blah blah blah. We're talking about
all
this.
of a sudden we turn into old country man.
Yeah,
who
we're
just
release our
their
inner
words.
Waylon.
Our inner what?
Waylon.
What is that?
That's just a common country dude named Waylon Jennings.
I've never heard that before.
Waylon, yeah.
Waylon Jennings?
Yeah,
Can we
like
bring him onto our
Hank
podcast?
Willie and Waylon. Waylon Jennings?
Yeah.
I bet we could get him. I bet if we had enough cold beer, I bet we could get him. If we had a Ford sponsorship, I bet we could get him. Or Chevy. Built tough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chevy with a pickup full of Bud Light.
Yeah. Or Natty
They'd
Light.
be flocking to us.
Oh, yeah.
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 Did you say our Natty Light?
Natty Light. Yeah, that feels like the new one. Or Lone Star. Lone Star is for the Texas ones. Them Texas
they were all
country
just
boys.
Bud Light boys.
No, not anymore.
Mm.
No, Bud Light's kind of controversial these days.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we really need to get into it. Those of you who know, you know. But
I don't know anything because I don't browse social media.
Oh, you liar!
No, I'm serious.
You don't browse social media?
Well, I get on TikTok.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I do browse TikTok, but that's like I don't watch any of my friends' stories. Maybe I click on their story, one friend's story, like once a month.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I actually don't browse social
That's
media.
true.
That's my rule.
Yeah.
Is that I can use social media as much as I want as long as I don't browse it. The only one I'm allowed to browse, as long as I keep it in check, is TikTok so that I can keep up with trends.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know, define browse, because I will look in my feed and I will look at my friends' stories, and that's about it. I don't explore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look at things that I don't follow.
See, but yeah, that's what I mean. Is I don't let myself like look through my feed at all. I don't look
the
through my
people
feed
you
at
actually
all.
follow.
The people that I actually follow.
That's interesting. That feels like different than what you'd expect.
I don't watch anybody's stories, and I don't browse.
Well, that's a
through
real shame because
people.
my story is a work of art. I have
Is
to
it
say.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, you're gonna be really disappointed if you look at it. Please don't.
Okay.
I'll
just keep it in my mind that it's a work of art that I'm missing out on.
Yeah. And then build it up so much, and then I will tell you the exact day that I'm like, hey, you'll have a great picture of what you're missing. You can look at it that day only.
Okay.
And then because I'll make sure that is the perfect time for you to come in and be like, whoa,
That'll be
she's really
perfect.
talking about something here. and then you'll never be able to look at it again.
It'll be like
you'll always wonder.
You'll just always be the one that got away to me.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. That's what I want to be.
Yeah.
Really. I don't want to be. No, really, Katie's the one that got away. So, but we're not talking about that because that's too fresh.
Yeah, it's too fresh. It just happened like
Katie,
5
we
minutes
miss you.
ago.
Come back.
Yeah, come back.
Please.
We love you.
Well, yeah, that's weird. Social media to me, I'm like, I don't want to do anything with anybody. I don't want to have to do anything with anybody that I don't know on social media.
So do you unfollow them or do you just mute them?
Unfollow, usually. Well, if there's somebody that I know that I don't necessarily want to see them post 40 times a day, I'll mute them because it's not like enough for me to be like, oh yeah, I'll unfollow you. Although sometimes it is. But usually, yeah, if it's somebody that I don't know, I'm probably not following them. Or if I've started following them and decide I don't want to follow them anymore, I unfollow them. I regularly purge not only just who I'm following, but who's following me. I'll go in and purge. I'm like, oh, I don't talk to this person enough anymore. I don't want them following me anymore. Not that I'm posting a whole lot that really matters, but I'll do that pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I've been removed a few times. No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
I know. Every once in a while I'm like, hey, sorry, it was an accident. No, it's just my deciding that you're not worthy.
I didn't talk to Delana this week.
She
Bye.
didn't even watch my story today. It was bussin'.
And I told her this was the 1 week she was allowed to watch my story. She didn't do it. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Immediately gone. Privileges revoked. No, I think I follow maybe 300 and something on Instagram, like maybe 300. Please don't check me on that because I'm probably wrong, but I know it's less than 400. And then I know that I have less than 500 followers on Instagram. And that's not like a point of pride for me. It's not a point of pride. It's just like I'll look through, and whenever you get to be 29 and you've gone to a large public university and you went through your master's program and you've been through several different jobs, you do collect a lot of people in all that time that you've actually met. And so a lot of the people who follow me, even though 300, like I say, I know all 300 of these people, I don't know them super well. I didn't keep up with them, but I can tell you this is how I met this person and how I'm affiliated with them to, I'd say without fail, probably all but maybe one or two of the people who follow me on Instagram right now. And I feel pretty comfortable with that. And then even still occasionally I go in and I'm like, okay, you're gone.
Yeah, and if you add me on Facebook, I'll maybe accept it like a few years later. That's how often I check my friend, and I just don't like it. I don't like people being on my private page unless I'm like really like public page. Fine, I'm very selective about what I'm sharing on my public page.
Yeah,
but my private page, I want it to be more private. You know? Like I don't want every professional that I've ever met in the industries that I've been in to be on my Facebook page, and they all want to be there. Like LinkedIn is fine, like LinkedIn, but I hate LinkedIn. But then whenever they start adding me on Facebook too, I'm like, why?
Yeah, like
why do you want to be all up in my business?
This is not a space for you. Read the room. No, I have, and I've talked about it before, and if you haven't guessed already, we're talking about social media tonight.
Yes.
But I have alluded to, maybe not so much alluded as like directly stated, how much I have a love and hate relationship with social media, and more times than not, it's the hate part. But as of right now, I have a Facebook and I have an Instagram. I got rid of my Twitter a while ago, enough so that I missed all the Elon Musk stuff, and now apparently it's X. Which, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, whatever.
Wow.
I had a TikTok account. I've had a couple of TikTok accounts because every once in a while I get on it and I browse, and then at some point I have like a really nice feed, and then I screw up the feed and I can't get it back to the nice part, so I just delete it. And then I have started from scratch again. Went through the exact same process, deleted it again, and I've not gone back. So, I have, what other? I go on YouTubes sometimes, and I know that that's technically social media. I don't really interact with it in a social way. Yeah. I don't comment. I don't be commenting. I don't be liking things. Yeah, it's more just it's just you're consuming it
like entertainment. Yeah.
I don't have Snapchat anymore, which apparently Snapchat is still huge.
Yeah, apparently it's bussin'.
That's surprising to me because whenever Instagram stole their stories idea and I started doing that, I was like, well, I don't really need Snapchat anymore. Yeah. And all of my friends weren't really using Snapchat anymore because we're millennials and we jumped ship. Yeah. But now apparently Snapchat is huge for Gen Z. Like Gen Z is still using Snapchat like we were when we first got it.
I know. It's made me consider using Snapchat, but I'm like, frick, that's another platform I have to post to.
So I brought Snapchat back into my life. It was deeply confusing because it's changed so much since the last time I used it. I got out of there pretty quick because I was like, I just cannot do this. I like the little life I've got with Instagram and Facebook being basically the same thing. And I don't even like the Facebook part, but I'm there because I have to run Facebook for my work.
Yeah.
And yeah, I got out there pretty lickety split. And I do have LinkedIn. I have a pretty good network on LinkedIn. I post a lot of jobs in the event industry on LinkedIn for my network, and that's about all I do on there. Otherwise, I'm pretty disinterested in it too. And I think that's pretty much the extent of my involvement in social media.
Yeah, the extent of my involvement is I watch YouTube occasionally. I browse TikTok usually for a little bit in the morning, but not as long as I used to. And I mostly am just like saving things that I want to like recreate.
Yeah. You're big into the content creativity side of it.
Yes, so that's why TikTok feels important to me. But otherwise, yeah, I don't keep up with my friends. It sounds so funny because I like watch all these strangers on the internet on YouTube and TikTok, but I don't keep up with my friends at all because I don't want to. Not because I don't want to keep up with my friends, but because
that's not how you want to keep up with your friends.
That's not how I want to keep up with my friends. Yeah, fair. I feel a little bit creepy knowing, like, sometimes people be sharing stuff on their story that's like really deep and really out there, and I'm like, and I feel like I'm just creeping on them, and it feels a little inappropriate to me sometimes that I'm like I haven't talked to you in like 2 years and I know all this stuff about your life, and that just feels a little weird to me. And so I'm just not gonna do that because I know that they're putting it out there and that's their choice and they're letting people consume it.
But you get the ick. You get the ick.
Yeah, I get the ick a little bit that it started to feel really inauthentic to me. And I didn't like, and this is one of the things that I want to talk about in this episode, I didn't like the way that it was shaping my mind to have relationships with people on more of a consumption level, that people started to become something to consume for me rather than people were to have a give and take relationship with. Yeah. That is what I feel like is the most damaging thing, is that it's oversimplifying people. I think that people are very complicated, and even whenever it feels like they're putting everything out there on social media, you're still only seeing the tiniest little portion of who they are. Yeah. And so I think it causes us to oversimplify people, to box people in, and to treat people as tools for consumption and entertainment rather than people. Yeah. You know, the humans that they are. And I didn't like that. And I think that's why it started to give me the ick. I was like, I want genuine relationships with people. And I want to feel like I want to feel actually engaged whenever I'm having a conversation with you, and not, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but I started feeling less engaged in my relationships because I feel like, I had already consumed a bunch of stuff on their social media. And so I felt like I already knew everything that was going on in their life. Yeah. And so I didn't put in as much effort to like engage with them, I guess, in a in-person way. And so that felt really inauthentic to me.
Well, there's all this research behind communication and about how there's these steps, right, that take place whenever you're communicating with somebody. And I'm going to butcher this. I just know I am, but it's something along the lines of, I have something I want to say. So in my brain, I encode it. I transmit it to you, you receive it, you decode it, understand it, formulate a response, encode that, send it to me, I receive it. And so it's this whole multi-step process that goes on, and it's very much involved in obviously neurological processes and everything, and there's so many things that then affect how we encode and decode and process things. And whenever you make it so much that all you're doing on social media ultimately in that space is receiving and sending, you don't have the encoding decoding thing happens, but it happens in its own separate space, separate from where the message actually is.
Mm-hmm.
I think you take so much of the important process of communication out of it whenever all you're doing is, there's a message on my screen, I'm going to receive it, and I'm going to decode it however I want. And then maybe I'll send a message back. I don't know. But for the most part, it's just like, it's a broken communication process. And it really does distill it down into being something that's essentially meaningless.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it does simplify things in a way that they are not supposed to be simple.
Right.
At what age did you get on social media? Because I think we were right on the cusp of like, MySpace came around first, and then whenever we were like middle school age, Facebook became a thing. But we weren't born into having parents that had social media or anything like that, or even having older siblings that had social media from a very young age, or a world that relied so heavily on it from everything, marketing, advertising, selling, like commerce and all of that. So
I think I want to say I was 12 or 13.
I think I was too.
Yeah, around that age.
MySpace first.
Yep.
Yeah. I definitely was 12 or 13. Yeah.
Yeah, because it would have been junior high.
I'm just thinking about the friends that I interacted with the most on MySpace, and what time in my life we were close, and I was 12 or 13.
Yeah. So it was the 2 years that I was in public school for me, and so that would have been junior high and first year of high school.
And y'all, it was so simple back then.
It was.
It was so
the most
simple.
dramatic thing was who was going to be your top 5.
Yeah. And what song you were putting on your playlist.
I miss all of that. Why can't we do that on Facebook?
Part.
That was fun.
And the only people you saw in your feed were like, the only people you had were the people that you added, or Tom. Wasn't it Tom?
Oh yeah, Tom.
Wasn't it Tom? Like, Tom was everybody's first friend on MySpace, or was it somebody else?
No,
was Tom?
I think it was Tom.
It was Tom. Yeah, good old Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so simple. Like, all you did was you spent a lot of your time looking for
HTML code, so that you could
for your theme, and you could like make sure, and you changed it every single week, and you could interact with your friends and stuff. And it was very simple back then. And I do have very fond memories of being on MySpace. And then Facebook came around, and everybody got on Facebook, which eventually killed MySpace. RIP. But Facebook came around, and I was early on that, but Facebook was so complicated compared to MySpace. Like, you could at that point make your page like eons long with all the different widgets and things that you could throw on there. Like, you could do the buttons. Do you remember the buttons that you could put on your profile? There was like a little app thing that you could throw on your profile, and then you could select like buttons, and then other people could give you buttons, and you could give buttons to other people. You don't remember that?
No.
Does anybody remember that? That was so much fun.
I was not part of this.
But then you had your wall, and your wall was where people, like, your wall was your page, and then you had a spot where people could actually comment on your page and leave you messages. And you could organize all of these things on your Facebook. And I remember at one point, because it was all so complicated and I was 13 years old, that where people could put a little message on my page was so far down the screen that once people got there, like, what the heck? Like, this is so far. This is such a journey to get here. I'm never doing this again.
That's so
And then, of course, Facebook eventually simplified itself. So, yeah.
Now the only reason I go on Facebook is for Marketplace and groups. I write a life update. Occasionally.
Yeah. I'm on it more than I'd like to be, because I now, as of my promotion, I now run social media for my department. So that's fun. But yeah, 12 or 13. It feels really, really young, but it feels really young in the context of social media as we know it now.
I know, yeah.
Back then, it was so simple. Like, I didn't even have internet on my phone. So if I was going to be on any social media, it was the time I was actually sitting at a computer and had received.
I know, you had to be at
my
the
mom logged into the computer for me, because we didn't keep she gave, logged into the internet for me, because she didn't our computers weren't constantly logged in. And she had to give us the internet password because she's brilliant and protected us from the internet at a young age, which was just, at the time, was really annoying, but now I understand.
Yeah.
And so that was the only time I ever had on social media, was whenever I was like actively logged in on a computer interacting with these things. Yeah, that's how I interact with it at a young age. It wasn't constant connectivity all the time like it is now.
Yeah.
I don't think I even had internet on my phone until I was a freshman in college.
Yeah.
So
now I get really bored with social media because since I've made the habit out of not browsing, I open my Instagram app and then I'm like, oh, I don't browse any of these.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm like, then I just put it back down.
Yeah.
And then I like open TikTok and I'm like, I don't really feel like watching TikTok.
Yeah.
And then I find something else to do. And I think putting yourself in a place where you're bored is like really important.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
But I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Just kind of point blank, do you think that that the negative effects of social media are nurture or nature?
I'm going to be really boring and say both.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a hard stance on this. I think that the negative effects wouldn't exist if it weren't a nature thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they would be so pervasive if it weren't a nurture thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it has to be both a little bit.
Mm.
So I guess I would then say maybe like 60-40, 70-30, and the larger side being nature, because I think that that's the more important piece of this. But I do think that we in order for that to survive, we have to nurture it.
Right.
You know? And I think that social media gives that space for people to nurture those negative things for whatever reason. I cannot understand why. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think that it is like a good, I would go even further to say that it's like 80-20, like 80% nature, because I think if humanity were to start all over again, we would end up in a very similar spot, you know? And so that's why I think it's nature, because I don't think it would exist if it wasn't in our nature.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but I do agree that like it's hard because I think that so many people go like, oh, by design, social media is trying to take over our brains, you know? And I'm like, actually, they follow what people respond to and they press into what people respond to. So actually
we're designing it for ourselves. We are designing our own hell.
We are designing our own hell, because they're not doing so. They're not like, oh, we're going to make people like this, because they can't really do that. They have to follow what people respond to. Otherwise their platform suffers.
Yeah.
And so they press into that, and that's why we're running into this issue where all of the platforms are becoming the same thing, because all of them are pressing into what people are responding to, which says how much of it is nature. You know, because if it were nurture, if it was primarily nurture, all the platforms would be vastly different, because they would all be trying to do something very different and nurturing us in those ways. But instead, they have to respond to how we respond to it and what we want from it. And so it becomes mostly nature, because they're all becoming the same thing.
So you know what? Actually, the way that you're explaining that makes me feel like it's a more even split. And the reason why is because if our nature is saying we like this thing and we like it this way, the nurture part of it is their response saying, okay, I'll give it to you and I'm going to waterboard you with it. Like, this is all you're going to see because you told me that you like this and I'm going to make money off of this from you. And then and I think that's the nurture part of it. And I think that obviously exists in other ways too, but that makes me actually think that it's almost like it's more of an even split, and that they are nurturing so much this thing that we have said that we like by engaging with something or responding to something or whatever else. And then them giving us more of it is almost that I am nurturing this in you and in my people who are, you know, the users or the members who are part of this. I feel like that's more of that nurture piece. I was at first coming at this as a nurture thing, as in how are we nurturing each other, is how is this being nurtured in me by other people who are engaging in this platform, not so much as like the company who is actually running it. And I do think that like advertising, so even just with advertising, whenever you are looking for something in particular, they do the targeted advertising. That's nurturing. Like that by nature is nurturing something that you've already shown some interest in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I had to think about it in that way now. I'm like, oh, that might be a little bit more of a balanced split. Maybe more that 70-30 or 60-40 that I was talking about, in that it does kind of nurture something in us that's already pre-existing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can see that, but I still think it's more of a nature thing.
Yeah.
Only because
First and foremost, it's a nature thing.
I think that we actually hold way more power over the
Yes.
platforms than
No,
the
agreed.
platforms hold over us.
Agreed.
I think that people talk about the platforms like they're these big monsters that are just raging with control.
Yeah.
On turning like downloading software into our brains and changing the way that our brains work. And I'm like, yeah, and they're not. You guys have way more power over this than you think you do.
Yeah, you just don't want the responsibility.
You just don't want the responsibility of saying,
That's the bottom line. You don't want the responsibility.
of saying, hey, maybe I shouldn't spend so much time on this platform and have some self-control.
Spend more time with my family.
Yeah, that's on you. It is on them for playing into, it being, but really they're just playing into what is natural to you.
Yeah.
And they have to do that, otherwise they become irrelevant.
Yeah.
And if they become irrelevant, we also lose everything that's good that comes with social media. And so it really comes down to us being responsible human beings, I think, and using things in ways that we should be using them. And
creating our own oasis in social media instead of crafting our own hell with it.
Yes. Yeah. So I have another question. Do you think that social media causes anxiety and depression?
That feels like a complicated question. I don't think it's so simple to say what causes anxiety and depression. I think genuinely anxiety and depression are things that are tied into so many things like genetics, any sort of like trauma or anything like that. So I don't want to say that it causes it, but I definitely think it plays a large role in how people experience anxiety and depression for a myriad of reasons. I think it can exacerbate it really, really badly. But I think also it can, in some ways, maybe help, because there's great spaces for mental health advocacy on social media too, that you can find a platform or a network that's going to pour into you and encourage you to get help, or maybe it's the way that you get help is on social media.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say that it causes it. I think there are other factors that cause it more than social media. I think you could probably more so anxiety as its own independent thing, not as a part of a disorder. People who don't have an anxiety disorder can have anxiety. Yeah. So I think in those ways, it can cause some anxious feelings in somebody, but I don't think it actually causes the disorder of anxiety or the disorder of depression.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it can have a tendency to feed anxiety and depression.
Yeah, feed it is a good way of saying it.
I do think, for me personally, I have found so much knowledge and so much comfort in people talking about their anxiety and depression on social media and being open about it and just being affirmed in those ways, and even getting hope, for some people sharing hey, my depression used to be this. I did XYZ and it helped me get over here. And this is how my depression operates now, whether it's better or worse or whatever. And just hearing a lot of those stories and even not even knowing that certain behaviors of mine were depression behaviors, or lack thereof, were, how hard it was for me to get out of bed. I would have never known that was a symptom of depression if it weren't for social media. Yeah. I wouldn't have known that some of these thought processes and me not having an interest in things that are good or usually fun for me in my life, I would have never registered those as a mental health crisis in a way. Yeah. You're just too busy thinking about it. And so it's helped a lot. But that's why I think that just being so careful with your social media consumption is so important, because if you're not, then if you're in a place in your life where you're dissatisfied and then you're seeing all these people that are seemingly doing so much better than you, that is harmful.
Yeah.
That can really...
Yeah, you got to protect your space.
Yeah.
Like, you protect your space in real life as much as you should protect your space on social media too.
Yeah.
There are times when you find yourself following somebody that's not making you feel good about yourself, and it's not necessarily that they're doing things intentionally to make you feel bad, but for some reason, whatever it is that they're putting out into the world, out into this, the space that you're choosing to occupy, there is something about that that's not sitting right with the life circumstances that you're experiencing or whatever else. And then that way you've got to protect your space. You've got to create, protect your energy and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so much easier, I think, to do on social media than it is your actual real life.
Totally.
So I think that that's actually a strength with social media, is that you can really curate that.
Yeah.
You can mute people on social media. You can't always mute people in real life. So I think that's a strength of it, and that you can really protect your space in those ways without having to do a whole lot to do that. And that, I'm talking about from personal experience, just throwing people off of following me, or, actively unfollowing people. I really try to protect that space that I have.
Yeah.
I think that that's such a huge strength in all of this, and that it actually probably bolsters your ability to cope whenever you're dealing with something, is that you can create a safe space and an encouraging space for yourself through these platforms that you may not be able to control so much in your actual life.
Yeah. So that actually leads into one of the things that I think, I agree that that's good. And I even agree that that is good practice, like a good starting point. If you're struggling with setting boundaries in your life, start on social media.
Big boundaries. Big fans of boundaries over here.
Start by just setting social media boundaries. Unfollow some people that aren't feeding you or having a positive impact on your life, especially unfollow or mute people that are having a negative. Like, just start in baby steps, and sometimes that's a good place to start to feel like you have some control over your own space. But I also think that that's a threat that social media has, in that people tend to start, especially with feeds that are over time cultivated to your preferences and the way that you think.
It's a vacuum.
You start to get sucked into your own thought bubble.
Yep.
And the way that you think, and that's why I think part of our world has become so volatile, is because they're all finding their people, and they're staying where those people are, because that's the side of social media that they are on, with Facebook groups, with personalized feeds and all the stuff. Like, that's the side of social media that they're on and constantly being reaffirmed in. And so these thoughts that bizarre or just totally off the wall beliefs that should not exist, honestly, that they are. And whenever I say, I mean like bigotry and stuff like that, like stuff that's just really evil. People are being reaffirmed in those thoughts and beliefs, and it's not so much, that's one of the biggest problems that I have with social media. Unless you're going somewhere like Reddit, for example. Reddit, you're being put into, well, Reddit also has subreddits, so that's a whole
we
thing.
We love compartmentalizing things. We love labeling things. We like putting ourselves in boxes and putting other people in boxes.
Yes.
It makes us comfortable.
Which is like understandable to an extent. Like, you're going to go to subreddit and you're just going to see every topic in the world. Like, no, you need to be able to find what you're looking for. And what makes sense to you. If you're not interested in photography, you're not going to want to see stuff about photography. And so it does make sense, but it also has this natural impact where
that's the nurture side.
Yeah, but I also think it's nature.
Yeah, it is, but it's also nature to seek out the nurture.
Yes.
So, and that's what we're doing.
Whereas if you were just born, let's say like caveman days.
Yeah, like I'm here.
If you're just born and you're born into a community, which that will happen in that community too, right? You're not going out and exploring the world and seeing different thought the
Bubbles.
systems, I don't know.
Yeah, systems
Ways of thought.
thinking.
And ways of thinking.
Yeah.
And you're not going out, so you're going to think the way
Philosophies.
that, but
Worldviews.
also you're put around, you're forced to be around people that also think differently from you. If I'm a cave girl born into caveman times and I start thinking one way that maybe my mom thinks, but then the village right next to me thinks differently, I'm near them. I have to be near them, and I have to deal with their thought process.
Except they didn't, though. This is all very tribal. Like, you go back to the tribal times, and we don't even have to go that far down, though. Like, if somebody did things very, very differently in the tribe next door, often they were mortal enemies.
They were mortal enemies.
They would kill each other on sight.
That's true.
It's very much in our nature. It's very much our tribal nature.
Yeah.
To associate ourselves with tribes, and that's what we're doing on social media.
That's what we're doing.
We are associating ourselves with other tribes that already think and act and do the things that we are thinking and acting and doing and believing, and creating those very hard lines between us and the next tribe next door.
I think that what social media is doing more than anything else is it is exposing us.
Oh, yeah.
It is exposing us far more than it is hurting us, like harming us or helping us. It's just exposing us.
Yes, except that you can be exposed anonymously on social media. You can do all the dirty, nasty, stupid things that you want to do on social media behind a completely faceless profile.
Yeah.
Yes, they are exposing the character of the person behind it, but it is not holding them responsible because it is completely anonymous.
Because they can do it. But whenever I said exposing us, I meant it's exposing
the overall.
It's exposing humanity.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Not just and human nature.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like exposing specific people.
Yeah. I wish it would.
I know, right?
I would enjoy
that
social
would be
media
so
much
satisfying
better if you had to, because if you did it from your own, if you did it with your own face and name attached to it,
and you could only have one profile, and if you
Yes.
screw that up, you're over with. Everybody knows how awful you are.
The internet would be so different. Like, it's such
So
a different,
different.
unrecognizable
Yeah.
place.
It would be like real life.
Yeah, really. And that's honestly, to me, at the core of it, like all the social media bullying and stuff. And there's a lot of people who will do this with their actual name and face associated with it.
I know.
And I just, there's not a single bone in my body who can even get close to understanding how you get to that point that you're comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. I don't get it. And I can't even say a whole lot about it because it's just so foreign to me.
Right. I know.
It drives me up the wall. It's not that hard to just keep your mouth shut and keep your thumbs still.
Mm-hmm. It's really not.
It drives me nuts. If you don't like something, you don't have to engage with it. I think that is apparently something people don't know.
People forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. But I did let myself.
But even on that note, I feel like, well, it is an open platform. People are allowed to share how they feel about it.
Yeah.
I kind of feel both ways, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I just think that if you're going to put that out there, like, don't expect a great response from it. Like, if you're going to put that negativity out there, like, don't.
I think some people crave it. They want that negative. They want that
negative
fight back.
That fight back. Yeah, totally. Yeah, but I kind of feel both ways about it. Like my initial reaction is like, what? Leave people at peace. Like, you know, why are you bothering them? Let them do what they do. And there's a part of me, like, I would say mostly I agree with that, but there's a little part of me that's just kind of like, well, they can, I guess they can say how they feel if they want.
Things should not stand just because they can. Like, just because you can say something doesn't mean you should.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you can say something doesn't mean that I should be comfortable with you having said something.
Yeah.
And I think in physical spaces, when we are around each other, that understanding still exists.
Yeah.
On social media, it does not.
Exist.
There is no repercussion. There's no accountability, because if I post something and I get somebody coming back, I can just delete it and it's like it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you screenshot it, I can tell you that it's AI or You know, AI is a whole thing now. I can't believe anything you see anymore. They all told us it was coming. It's either AI, or you can say it's Photoshop, or you change your username or whatever. There's so many ways that you can get out of something, but there's no accountability. There's no repercussions. There's no real like feeling of ownership in the social media space, unless by nature you're somebody who just naturally feels that crippling like accountability to the people around you and obligation to the people around you, which I am blessed with that. But I wish that existed on social media, and it just doesn't. And I don't think it ever really has. I'm not sure what the difference is. I don't know what it is that makes it so that people can go on social media and bully each other. And
because they don't have to physically say it. I literally think that you physically saying something, you feel the weight in your words way more than if you just like type it.
Yeah.
You know, that's why saying something to somebody can be so much more, it can relieve you a lot more than if you were just to type how you feel on a screen. In your notebook, you know what I'm saying? Actually saying something to somebody, every human being at their core knows that it carries a lot more weight.
Yeah.
And so that's really all I think it is. You know, to actually speak up and say something is a lot harder than writing something in silence by yourself.
Yeah.
I want to clarify, because I think that the only thing that I don't think that it's okay to just spew hate.
I know.
Like, I just want to clarify for anybody listening, like, I don't think it's, whenever I said like, oh, well, they're allowed to share their thoughts.
But they are. Yeah.
You know, I that's not what I mean, is that like, oh, they're allowed to come in and make bigoted comments and all this stuff. Like, I don't think that is okay. I don't think there's any room for that ever.
Yeah.
And I don't think any room should ever be made for that. I mean that in the sense that, like, I've seen time and time again where somebody shares a thought that is not mean. It just disagrees with something. And these influencers or these people with these platforms turn it into like, oh, these haters and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, they're not really hating. They just don't agree with you. And is it okay for them to share that? Like, is it okay for there to be room for that?
Yeah.
Does it always have to be a hater if they disagree with you? Because I don't think that's healthy either.
Yeah.
I think that you should give people the benefit of the doubt when trying to engage with them. Like, don't always think that they're just being a hater because they're sharing a conflicting thought. And also be okay with being misunderstood. It's going to happen. It's going to happen whenever you share your thoughts on social media. Don't be okay with being in a yes chamber. Like that. I feel like that's so easy to fall into on social media and anywhere. Don't be okay with being in a yes chamber. Be open. And I think social media is a good place for that, even though that comes with bad things as well.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about how social media is such a highlight reel. I mean, we talked about the negative sides of it and everything, but I think a sneaky negative side of social media is that we only put the best of our lives on it usually. Like, we don't usually put the bad stuff. And I think even just acknowledging that in the last few years, it seems to be a lot more prevalent that people are saying like, oh, social media is a highlight reel, so I gotta get real here. I'm gonna share all the bad stuff that's happening in my life, and then it almost goes to the opposite extreme. And you're like, hold on a little bit, we didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
You know, we want some real, but we don't want all the real. I don't really have a bad relationship with the idea of social media being a highlight reel. It feels very natural to me that it's like kind of your scrapbook, right? Like, you're putting the best of your life into a scrapbook. You're not putting like a toe tag or like a death certificate in a scrapbook or anything like that. You're putting your birth certificate, you're putting your wedding announcement, you're putting your graduation invitation or program or whatever. You're putting the highlights of your life. And that's what social media, that's what that plays to, is putting those highlight reels to as well. But I do think that with how much we tend to compare ourselves to others, that having that highlight reel aspect and kind of losing sight of the fact that that's what it's meant to be tends to then feed those negative feelings that people are trying to dismiss in a way. Because I think you go on social media, you want to try to make yourself feel good. Like, you want to post the high notes of your life. So other people are like, oh yeah, that's so great. You look so good. I can't believe you got to travel there or whatever. And you're looking for that out of social media a lot of the time. Even me, who I would like to say that I can't ignore the fact that those things do make me feel good. And whenever we go on there looking for it, there's always going to be somebody else who has it better in our minds, in our eyes, that there's somebody else who has it better. And so even though we're getting the affirmations that we want out of these things, we are still finding somebody who makes us feel like that's not enough. And so it almost becomes like, I don't know, it's no longer the scrapbook that it's just meant to be. There's so many other twisty turny kind of motivations within that. And we're interacting with each other in ways that we probably don't recognize that we are fully, or that we're having influence on other people in ways that we don't realize that we are. I mean, I had not too long ago, I feel like I have a pretty healthy relationship with social media in that I don't go overboard with it. But I realized not too long ago, probably like a year or so ago, that somebody I've known for a long time had ended up blocking me on Instagram and Facebook. And I was just like kind of bent out of shape. I was like, well, what did I do? Like, what did I do to deserve that? And I've had a couple of people block me. Some people, you know, when I end up engaging them, because I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Like, we have to be good. Like, this is not a relationship that I can just let this go. We've got to figure it out, and we have to be good with one another because we interact way too frequently for this to be existing. But then there's other people like this person in particular who I can just let it go. But it kind of bent me out of shape because I'm like, what did I do to deserve that? But sometimes it's not about you. Like, sometimes it's about, for some reason, whatever it is I'm posting doesn't sit well with this person. And that has to be okay. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to address it. I have to just acknowledge that they get to make that decision about my posts, and that no matter how tame I think my life is on social media, it still may be having an influence on other people in a way that is much bigger than I even understand. And they get to decide how to interact with that. And I mean, I think it's just all kind of funny, the different layers that exist within this.
Well, one of the ways that I think that social media is really negatively impacting us is the way that I think it is literally creating introverts. I think that social media.
Oh, we've talked about this before.
This
is a previous episode callback.
Yeah, I don't remember what episode I got off on this.
I think it was the personality tests one, sort of.
It might have been. It
or
was
the
a very.
I think we've had an introvert extrovert episode of some sort.
Yeah. And so I think that it is literally training our brains, kind of to go off of what I said towards the beginning of this episode, where social media kind of teaches us more to consume people. I think that that's why we have so many more introverts now, because I think that it is teaching us to consume people. It's teaching us that socializing happens by myself right here. And I don't have to say anything. I don't even have to move. I only have to move my thumbs. You know, whereas actual socializing is a give and take. It is what you said, that processing, like those steps and the processing, that requires a lot more work. And so social media has now created a gap in our mind between how we're used to socializing at home versus how actual socializing is. Right? And so that's why I think everybody feels like they're an introvert now, because they're like, man, I just get so burnt out. I can only handle like X amount of time with people.
Because their threshold is so low.
Which to an extent is normal. I think even without
everybody's got that. Even extroverts.
Yeah, even extroverts have that battery. But I just think that it literally has created that gap in our mind now. And that's the problem. That's why we all think that we're like these really bad extroverts now, because now we get in front of somebody and you're taking a lot more energy from me to discuss because I now have to process what you said and encode
And it's not
it
a
and
natural process.
send it back to you. Well, it is a natural process, but it's
I know, but it's not one that we exercise as frequently as we might have 50 years ago.
exactly. Yeah. And so like it feels like a lot more work than it's supposed to feel.
Yeah.
I think it should feel a lot more natural to us. But now it feels like work because we've been conditioned to socialize on our own.
You know what I'm thinking about right now is that whenever I was in grad school, I really got in the habit of doing grocery pickup. Like, because I worked full time. I was going to school. I finished my degree in 18 months. And so the last thing that I wanted to do with my spare time was go walk through a grocery store and pick up the individual things, find them and all that. I'm like, I want to sit here at my computer that I'm always on 24/7 anyway right now. And just throughout a couple of days, fill up my grocery cart, set it up. It takes me 5 minutes at the grocery store to sit there and let them put it in my car. And so I was doing that for so many years. I mean, this is grad school. I graduated 2018 with my master's degree, and I probably started that midway through. So let's say 2017, I started doing this. And then, which was great when COVID came around because I had that down pat. Like, I wasn't learning any new behaviors. I just had more options because everybody was starting to do that. But I just became so ingrained in doing that process and making it a lot less of a interactive thing. And now that Cord lives in town, he loves going to the grocery store. And so it's like so hard for me. I'm like, but this is so easy. This is so much easier.
Yeah.
I'm like so dead set in my habit of just doing it all here instead of doing it physically like I was doing for so many years before. And as you were talking about this with social media, I was immediately thinking about this because all I want to do is sit on my phone and put in the order and then they're ready and I just have to go pick them up. It's so much easier. It's so much more transactional.
Yeah.
Versus being in leadership classes, they'll talk to you about transactional, relational, and transitional leadership. And it feels very transactional, which is not the good kind.
Right.
Just it reminds me of that transactional thing that it's like, I just need this to be a transaction and then I'm done. Like the job is done. We're good. Yeah. There's nothing relational about it. There's nothing social about it at all. It's just a transaction. I've done what I need to do here. Yeah. We're done. Yeah. I don't have to waste my time on it. I don't have to try that hard. Yeah.
That's the thing that I think is the most damaging about social media is that it provides us with that opportunity to have a really, really lazy form of socialization. Yeah. I think that gap in our mind should not exist. But social media exists, so it will exist, and I think we just need to be aware of it.
I think it should be an aid in real socialization. Like, I think it's fine because there's people obviously who live across the country from you that you care about deeply, that you don't have the ability to have that natural biological form of communication and relationship with. And so I think social media really does fill that gap in a nice way, but it should not be your sole form of connecting with another human being.
Oh, I'm a huge advocate for social media, contrary to everything that I've said in this episode, because social media provided me with so many opportunities. I literally on Facebook, one of the reasons I am here today doing what I do for a living is because on Facebook I went and I was like, I really want to be a makeup artist. That's just like, that was my big dream at the time. I wanted to be a full-time makeup artist and dream bigger. Big dreams. It's just so, it's like I look back on that time with fondness. I'm like, oh, that was like my biggest dream at the time, and now I've gone so much farther.
Oh, that's cute.
It's like so wholesome, and I love it. And there are people that are only makeup artists full time and they do so well for themselves, so I'm definitely not saying diminishing that dream. At that time I was like, I really want to be a full-time makeup artist, and I had no other resources to me. I wasn't able to go to cosmetology school. I had to work. I had to pay for my apartment. I was only 18 years old, and I didn't want to go back home. It was a toxic place to live. My mom was living with my grandmother at the time, and so I didn't really feel like I had anywhere to go And so I was like, well, maybe if I can just get my hands in the field, then I'll be able to do it. And so I searched on Facebook makeup artists.
Yeah.
And it found a local makeup artist, and I messaged her and I was like, hey, I really want to get into, I just cold messaged her. I was like, hey, I really want to become a full-time makeup artist. It's my dream. Are you looking for any like apprentices or anything like that? And the only reason I did that was because I watched a YouTube video from a full-time makeup artist who was like, hey, if you want to be in the makeup artist field and you want to make it big time, go find somebody who's doing what you want to do and just offer to clean their brushes in between clients for them. Like just tell them you'll work for free and you'll just clean their brushes. You just want to gain experience.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what I did. I found her on Facebook. So I found that video on YouTube. I watched that. I learned that skill, messaged her on Facebook, and became a full-time makeup artist from that. And so I think that there's so much power in social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much connecting that is possible in so many great and positive ways. But we have to keep it in check.
Yes.
We just have to keep it in check, and we have to be aware of the damages that it can do. I would like to share a quote from my therapist.
Oh, yeah. Give it to us.
Circumstances don't change a man. They just expose him. It's one of my favorite quotes that he's ever told me. And every single time a situation happens in my life where I react in a way that I'm like, well, wasn't expecting that reaction to come from me. I need to look into that.
Yeah.
Something's there, you know, that I need to look into. And that's in a nutshell how I feel about social media, is that the things that we do in our world or the things that happen to us in our lives, even as small as social media, don't change us. They just expose us.
Well, with that,
bye.
bye. I mean, really. All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight for this episode. I know that we got a little bit heated. We didn't even scratch the surface. I don't think there's so much more to talk about. Maybe we have another episode at some point going
social
into
media series.
Yeah, going into more of the beauty standard. We've had beauty standards episode, but going into more of how social media plays into that and everything. There's just so much more to talk about, and there are things that I'm sure that you guys feel about this too that we didn't touch on tonight, but we did our best. Okay.
Yeah, we're trying.
We're not here trying to waste your time. So that's it from us tonight. So until we meet again, just remember to wear your sunscreen,
drink your water,
and be kind to yourselves. Bye.
Bye.
We love you.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us again for this week's episode of the Womanly Podcast. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media to hang out with us in between episodes and see pieces of our conversations that we don't get to include in these episodes, plus all of our bloopery humanness. We're on Instagram at Womanly Pod and TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter at Womanly Podcast. We hope to hang out with you more there. Have a super womanly week.
Was that good? Do you want us to do it again?
Okay.